Hey, hello. Yes, my name is David Ehrman, and I am with North Texas Sabbatarians over in Springtown, Texas. And what I wish to discuss today is going through the teachings of Messiah. Of course, the first account we have of the teachings of Messiah is in the second chapter of Luke. This is where he appears in the temple at the age of 12 years. And we go, and I am using the scriptures put out by the Institute for Scriptural Research out of South Africa. It's a sacred name type Bible, even though I'm not exactly of that persuasion, but I do like to return, to the Tetragrammaton. I do like to, which, it's the name of God. I like to, return to Jesus' Aramaic name, which is Yeshua, but even though this goes, this one uses Yehoshua, it inserts the Hebrew letters in the Greek, surprisingly, but the Yehoshua is more of the Hebrew. But we go into Luke 2:41 and on down, and it says, and his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the festival of the Passover. That, yes, Jerusalem, of course, means Jerusalem. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the practice of the festival. And when they had accomplished the days, as they returned, the child Yehoshua stayed behind in Jerusalem, and his parents did not know it. But thinking he was in the company, they went a day's journey and were seeking him among the relatives and friends. And not having found him, they returned to Jerusalem seeking him. And it came to be after 3 days that they found him in the set-apart place. That means the temple, set-apart place. It means the temple. It was actually the courtyard of the temple. Of course, he wouldn't go into the places, reserved for the priests, and not being a Levite and all that. And sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And when they all heard him, they were astonished at his understanding and answers. And having seen him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, Son, why have you done this to us? See, your father and I have been anxiously waiting for you. After anxiously seeking you. And he said to them, Why were you seeking me? Did you not know that I had to be in the matters of my Father? But they did not understand the word which he spoke to them. And he went down with them to Nazareth and was subject to them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart. And Yehoshua increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with Elohim and men. This is, Luke went around and he talked to people, and this is, of course, the recollection of his mother, who, of course, survived him. His father's just, the earthly father, Joseph, just disappeared. So, from the gospel accounts. So, take it that he died. if we You know, this was before, you know, they actually had anything like bar mitzvahs at, you know, 12 and 13 years of age. You know, that came along later, but it was leading up to it. And I go in, I'm under the Bible Hub. I can go and look into some of these commentaries. I'm going to look into Eliot's commentary, commenting on verse 42. It says, when he was 12 years old, the stages of Jewish childhood were marked as follows. At 3, the boy was weaned and wore for the first time the fringed or tasseled garment prescribed by Numbers 15:38 to 41 and Deuteronomy 22:12. His education began at first under the mother's care, and on, and go on further down. At 12, he became more directly responsible for his obedience to the law, and on the day when he attained the age of 13, put on the first time the phylacteries, which were worn at the recital of his daily prayer. See note on Matthew 23:5. It was accordingly an epoch of transition analogous to that which obtains us at confirmation. You know, it's just Eliot was in some sort of false religious movement. You know, but you know, I don't practice confirmation or anything. I don't even practice bar mitzvah. You know, but I've been to a few. You know, Messianic, of course. You know, I mean, well, okay. At 3, I believe that Yeshua would have been at the point where he started, you know, remembering his previous life, already. His previous life in eternity. It's kind of like we tend to say, okay, how old is the Messiah? Okay, eternity minus 3. You know, he was dead for 3 days and 3 nights. Okay, what's eternity minus 3? Infinity minus 3? Yeah. But the Father doesn't have any minus any time. But here he is. His age is infinity minus 3. Whether you go forward or backward. Well, to go to the scripture cited, Numbers 15:38 to 41. And it reads, "Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them to make tzitzit on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue cord in the tzitzit of the corners." Of course, by tzitzit is, the blue fringe. You know that originally it was sold on to the garment of the Israelites. Tends to be modern Jews and Messianics and such. Just put it on with a clothespin. You know, I mean, that's not what the Bible says to do. I was told that it works out better with washing machines, you know, washer and dryers and all that. But, and verse 39, and it shall be to you for a tzitzit, and you shall see it, and shall remember all the commands of Yahweh, and shall do them, and not search after your own heart and your own eyes, which you went whoring, so that you remember and do all my commands, and be set apart unto Elohim. I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. You know, the whole context of this, you know, it's interesting how this command is given right after a man had violated the Sabbath law. He went around gathering sticks, and you know, it's only a step from that to worshiping false gods, is either implied in verse 40. It says, set apart unto your Elohim, and verse 39 talks about, and not search after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you went whoring. You know, someone going whoring after other gods. So sometimes, you know, other gods might be your own desires, your own lust. And but to get the whole context, it's earlier on in the chapter. Verse 32 through 36. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moshe and to Aharon, which means Aaron, you know, his brother, who was the high priest, and to all the congregation. And they put him in under guard, because it had not been declared what shall be done to him. And Yahweh said to Moshe, the man shall certainly be put to death, all the congregation stoning him with stones outside the camp. And the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, as Yahweh commanded Moshe, and he died. And supposedly this man had 5 daughters, at least according to some Jewish accounts, which might be more speculation, but it somehow kind of makes sense anyway. It says Numbers 27 verses 1 to 3, you know, it says the daughter of Zelophehad, they spell it a little differently in this scripture. Then came the daughters of Zelophehad, son of Hepher, son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, from the clans of Manasseh, son of Yosef. Yeah, that means he was of the birthright tribe of Joseph. These were the names of his daughters: Mahlah, Noah, and Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they stood before Moshe and before Eleazar the priest and before all the leaders and all the congregation by the doorway of the tent of meeting, saying, our father died in the wilderness, yet he was not in the company of those who were met together against Yahweh in company with Korah, but he died in his own sin, and he had no sons. where it says he died in his own sins, that's how they take it, that, oh, this is someone who, committed a sin worthy of death, and he had no sons to pass his inheritance to. And they took it as the man who was gathering wood, not just mere sticks, but I'm talking about, heavier wood, where he might have been sawing or cutting off branches and all that stuff. He was collecting wood for a fire, and that's was considered a violation of the Sabbath, which I know down these days, it's like, if you want to cook, you just turn on the switch and put the food on the stove or the grill, or whether it's electricity or gas or whatever. It's more of a simple thing. But hey, back then they didn't have that stuff, and that's why they had such a thing as a preparation day, because hey, they didn't have the utilities that we have. They couldn't warm up the water. They couldn't warm up the food. They didn't have a source of light. But the conclusion that Yahweh gave Moses was the daughters would receive an inheritance if there was no son to pass it down to. Basically, at the 12 years of age, they, ended up, wearing tzitzits and started wearing a tefillin. We can go into the article, the Bar and Bat Mitzvah. It's in Wikipedia, and I'm not going to read all of it, of course. But it says, Bar Mitzvah is a Jewish coming-of-age ritual for boys, whereas Bat Mitzvah is a Jewish coming-of-age ritual for girls. It's the coming-of-age ritual for girls is kind of new. The plural B'nai Mitzvah for boys, Benot Mitzvah for girls. According to Jewish law, when a Jewish boy is 13 years old, he becomes accountable for his actions and becomes a bar mitzvah. A girl who becomes a bat mitzvah at the age of 12, according to Orthodox and conservative Jews, and at the age of 13, according to Reformed Jews. Before the child reaches bar mitzvah age, his parents hold responsibility for his child's actions, and on and on. And further on it says, the Bible does not explicitly specify the age 13. Passages in the book of Exodus and Numbers note the age of majority for army service is 20. And it gives the history of it. It says the modern method of celebrating a bar mitzvah did not exist in the time of the Hebrew Bible, Mishnah, or Talmud. Early rabbinic sources specify 13 as the age at which a boy becomes a legal adult. However, the celebration of this occasion is not mentioned until the Middle Ages. So that's why, he wasn't having a bar mitzvah. He was just coming of age, and probably starting to wear, these things, and the tzitzits and tefillin. course, and as we will see, these teachers will be quite a bit surprised at him. Go to the article in Wikipedia for tzitzits. It's tzitzits are especially knotted ritual fringes or tassels worn in antiquity by Israelites and today by observant Jews and Samaritans. Now, Samaritans, of course, they existed in the New Testament times and sometime before then. They still do exist, but in much smaller numbers, and they are around the area, northern Israel, around their sacred mountain. And they have a different sacred mountain than Zion, which is sacred to the Jews, and it's actually sacred in the Bible. It's where we're going to go keep the feast in the millennium. It says tzitzits are attached to the four corners of the talit gadol, prayer shawl, usually referred to simply as talit or talits or talit katan, everyday undergarment. Other pronunciations include Sephardic tzitzit, Ashkenazi tzitzits, blah blah. And there's this that next article I'm going to go to is from the Faux Gospel Businessman's Training, and they borrow something from a messianic source. It said, did Yeshua, Jesus, have a bar mitzvah? And it reads, after 3 days they found him, Yeshua, in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Luke 2:46. The bar mitzvah is a milestone in Jewish life. It not only tells the world that the child has reached adulthood and has taken greater responsibilities for his or her actions, it also strengthens his or her identity as a Jew. In Jewish law, Jewish girls at age 12 and boys at age 13 become responsible for observing Jewish ritual laws, traditions, and ethics. The rite of passage associated with this observance is the bar mitzvah for boys and bat mitzvah for girls. Bar mitzvah usually means son of commandment, and bat mitzvah means daughter of commandment. However, the term in rabbinic usage has come to mean one who is subject to the law. Once they are subject to the law, boys and girls are free to participate in all areas of Jewish community life, as we'll read about future on in this feature article. Although the ceremony today differs from its ancient past and became a unanimously accepted Jewish custom some 400 years ago, in the Gospels we read that Yeshua, Jesus, was examined by the temple priests and teachers at age 12. Luke 2:41-42. And of course, I think I will finish off with that article and go on further. To discuss the Tefillin, we go to Deuteronomy 6. Deuteronomy 6, 7 through 19. No, 7 through 9. I think I will begin in verse 4. And this is something that is often recited in Messianic congregations. They get that more from a traditional synagogue. It says, "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our Elohim." Yahweh is one. Modern Jews usually say Adonai instead of Yahweh. "And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and all your being and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart. And you shall impress them on your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." Of course, binding them on your hand, or tying them on your hand, and putting them up as frontlets between your eyes, or more, it's more like a box on the forehead, a very small box, and known as the tefillin. May be more familiar with the word phylactery. It's a Greek derivation. And Yeshua uses that word in Matthew 23:5. If you want to look at that. Yeah, I for sake of time, I don't think I'll go on to that, but he's basically criticizing the Pharisees for making a show of it, not for wearing it, because he probably did himself, but that they made theirs big for emphasis, to draw attention to themselves. Reading from this article, again in Wikipedia, tefillin, or phylacteries, is a set of small black letter boxes containing scrolls of parchment inscribed with verses from the Torah. Tefillin is worn by observant adult Jews during weekday morning prayers. In Orthodox communities, it is only worn by men, while in non-Orthodox communities, it may be worn by men and women. Although tefillin is technically the plural form, the singular being tefillah, it is often used as a singular as well. The arm tefillah is placed on the upper arm, and a strap wrapped around the arm, hand, and fingers, while the head tefillah is placed above the forehead. It is intended to fulfill the Torah's instructions to keep a sign and remembrance of the Exodus, signifying that God brought the children of Israel out of ancient Egypt. And now I'm going to return to the second chapter of Luke. Now I'm not going to finish reading that article. You may wish to go on and finish the article on your own. Just go to Wikipedia and look it up. Scrolling on down, back to scrolling instead of turning pages, like the ancient ways when the scriptures were on the scroll. Later on, they came up with bound books. Continuing in verse 43, it says, when they had accomplished the days, as they returned, the child Yehoshua stayed behind in Jerusalem, and his parents did not know it. But thinking he was in the company, they went a day's journey and went seeking him among the relatives and friends. Now, how would that be possible? I mean, most people, you would notice if somebody in your family's missing. You know, he had 4 brothers. At least when he was, by the time he was adult, he had 4 brothers. And he had a plurality of sisters. He had at least 2. He may have had more. They aren't named. The sisters aren't. But why they wouldn't know this is because they would travel in large groups. So in large groups, more of an extended family group, and the extended family, the neighbors or acquaintances, and they thought he was somewhere amongst them, and they believe, commentators believe, they may have stopped, and the day's journey is in the town of Beeroth. It's Beeroth. That's about 6 miles north of Jerusalem, and that's the route they would be taking. They take the northern route to go back to Nazareth. And right now there's, Arab towns in that vicinity. But back then it was, part of Judah, part of Judea, I mean. And there would be places to settle down and sleep, and it was nighttime, and they go around them, go to everybody's, lodging place, camp, where ever they'd be staying. It's just a place to sit down and sleep. Not like nothing fancy like a hotel room or anything like that. And they didn't find him visiting with any of them, so they start going back. But in verse 45, and not having found him, they returned to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to be after 3 days that they found him in the set-apart place. And as I mentioned before, set-apart place just means the temple. Of course, he would be in the courtyards because he was neither a Levite nor a grown man. And sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And they think that, it's likely that, say Nicodemus was amongst those teachers. Nicodemus, he appears in John 3 at the beginning of the chapter, where he's talking about what does it mean to be born again. Talk about, say, either being born again or begotten again. What does it mean? And he asked, can I be born a second time? I am old. How can I be born a second time? And when he says he is old, that means he wasn't someone who the Jews confused with later on. There's another Nicodemus who appears about 40 years later, who was a famous teacher. He's not the same guy. It's not the same guy who was, there around, whether it's at 27, 28 AD in John 3. Over here, this would be, about maybe 10 AD or 6 AD or something like that. Whenever Yeshua was about to turn 12, he was it's like maybe 8 AD. So yeah, he basically would meet Yeshua, again about 18 years later, and still listening and asking questions, But this time he comes as the one wishing to learn. But they were surprised, that this boy seemed to know more than they did. It's verse 47. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And having seen him, they were amazed, the parents. And his mother said to him, Son, why have you done this to us? See, your father and I have been anxiously seeking you. And he said to them, Why were you seeking me? Did you not know that I had to be in the matters of my Father? But they did not understand the word which he spoke to them. Basically, he said he would be, sometimes some translations put it, in the house of my Father. It's like in the Syriac does, and so some they go and pass it down into some English versions, but the original was Greek, and it is a bit of ambiguous, and it can be either or both, about the Father's business or in his house. And I'm not an authority on that, but that's what I was told from the sources I looked. And basically he knew he was here seeking his Father's will, and that was his goal. That was his purpose in life, and and that was his first teaching. His first teaching was in the form of a question to his parents, to his earthly parents. He had, of course, Mary was his physical mother. Joseph was not his father in any biological sense. He was a father in status. He was a father in genealogy. But biologically, he was not his father. However, we are all born of God. So, in that sense, he came. He's like a father adopted in. And John 4:34 says, I'll go and get the context. It says, they went out of the city and were coming to him. But in the meantime, his taught ones were asking him, saying, Rabbi, eat. By taught ones, they mean disciples there. And he said to them, I have food to eat of which you do not know. And here he is speaking in mysteries, and they don't understand it. Verse 33, then the taught ones, our disciples, said to each other, did anyone bring him food to eat? And Yehoshua said to them, my food is to do the desire of him who sent me, and to accomplish his work. So, he is speaking more symbolically, more metaphorically. That is his goal and mission in life. That is more important than his own food and nourishment. John 5:30. Of myself I am unable to do any matter. As I hear I judge, and my judgment is righteous, because I do not seek my own desire, but the desire of the Father who sent me. Basically that means he is sent to do the Father's will. John 5:36. But I have a greater witness than that of Johanan. By Johanan he meant John the Baptist, who of course was a witness. He came before, preparing the way for him. For the works that my Father gave me to accomplish, the works that I do, bear witness of me, that the Father has sent me. So here we have two witnesses. And of course the Father is the greater witness. And he bears witness through the works and miracles. And the last text, John 19:28-30. It's interesting that John is the one who speaks so much about Yeshua's or Yehoshua's goal is to live according to the Father's will. You know, John was the disciple that Yeshua loved, as it's said in several cases in that gospel. It says, after this, Yehoshua, knowing that all had been accomplished, in order that Scripture might be accomplished, said, I thirst. A bowl of sour wine stood there, and they filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on hyssop, and held it to his mouth. So when Yehoshua took the sour wine, he said, it has been accomplished. And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. So basically he said he accomplished the Father's will. He had made the sacrifice. He's taken his last breath, was about to. And with that, I'm going to end my message for today, and hope you are all doing well. Thank you.